Let us talk about another area that we returned to this season. Again, stuff from the past of the show that, some people might have forgotten about to some extent. But, I think Yara, she's made enough of an impression, but we hadn't seen that much of Balon Greyjoy until now.
It's funny. I had a chance to talk to both Gemma Whalen, who plays Yara, and Patrick Malahide, who plays Balon. And I was talking, he's like, we're never going to get a moment where Balon and Theon are able to put, their issues behind them. Yeah. He hasn't seen him in a while. And Patrick goes, well, he saw part of him. I was like, but it really, I think that was one of the last major scenes, like when they got Theon's penis in the mail. And then when Yara went to go save Theon, but he was so far into being Reek that he wouldn't leave with her. Like, those are the last big things we saw with these characters, and it's been a while since we really got to deal with any of that.
Yeah.
Do you think they did a good job picking it sort of back up?
I think they did the best they could. I mean, with the Balon stuff seemed very accelerated because he literally is like, I'm back, I'm grumpy, I'm dead. Mm-hmm. And I almost wish, it's one of those things where like I kind of maybe wish we'd seen him for a couple more episodes before they killed him off.
Listen, he was on borrowed time anyway.
He was on borrowed time. I think Yara, we've seen her enough to have an investment in her though, certainly. But it is interesting, because look, the books went a little crazy. I'm one of those people who's critical of the 4th and 5th book as far as like so many new characters introduced in what's already a very dense story. The show is scaled back extremely, a lot.
They don't even name the Aaron Greyjoy, the damp hair. Like,
right.
He's just a character there who you might know who he is if you know who that's supposed to be.
Right. But, I think we're still going to get to know his world a lot more here. The fact that Theon is now heading back home will hopefully
really
make it.
Mm-hmm.
This is Game of Thrones. People don't always get where they're trying to get. Mm-hmm. But I think he will. I think just the fact that we're bringing in so many of his family members at this point. And now the idea, a word, Kingsmoot, introduced.
Kingsmoot! Kingsmoot hype!
Which, I think if you haven't read the books, it's clear you can tell, okay, this is going to be sort of how they make the decision on who the next leader is, and that there are now a lot of different people in play, especially the fact that we know Theon's coming back home, which no one else knows at this point.
My one concern is, like, we're seeing so much emphasis put on this. Will it have payoff? Will the Ironborn actually be important to it? Obviously, Euron's storyline is important in a sort of unexpected way in the book that they're setting up in the show, which I'm being intentionally vague, but there's a way it could go in that direction. But with Theon coming back, I'm like very intrigued how he could be brought into the mix. And I asked Gemma Whalen this, I was like, is this going to be important? Is it going to have larger resonance within the season? And she said that she couldn't say, but why they wouldn't put this much emphasis on it without it being important in some way. I'm just worried about another Dorne situation that they did put so much emphasis on, and it was a bit of a mess.
I'm also, by the way, it wasn't. They didn't even go there this week, but I'm concerned with the Dothraki stuff right now, which obviously was important early on in the show. But do we need to go back?
Right, to Vice Dothrak.
And especially, right now, because I think this episode, and, we're coming out of a couple of weeks where Benioff and Weiss have been quoted more and more talking about how they're aiming towards the end and how there's 10 to 15 episodes left after the current season. We're in the final act of Game of Thrones, basically.
Feels very accelerated.
And it really feels accelerated. Stuff like Roose being killed, Jon returning, it feels like setting up the ending stuff. And that's why it is a concern, and this is why in the books I think it went a little too far with like, okay, we're going to introduce a bunch of new stuff. So I do hope, because again, Theon's been an important character since the beginning, but how much of his world do we need to see beyond it being interesting, but you want it to have significance?
Let's be honest, we're probably jumping straight to the Kingsmoot. Like, I don't think that there's going to be a lot of politicking and stuff like that. I don't think there's going to be a lot of campaigning with the various contenders. I have a feeling they're going to call the Kingsmoot. Euron is going to show up. Yara is going to be surprised. She already has sworn revenge on whoever killed her father, which is crazy because in the books, they leave that up to interpretation. People interpret it as being that Euron went and killed Balon up, on the bridge, but we never see it. So for us to see that now, I thought was an interesting choice and probably directly tied to Yara's revenge statement.
Yeah, I think you're right. It'll be accelerated because whoever is the leader we will then see it kind of, okay, what will be their role now as we head towards the end of this show, which I know is still probably 2 years away, but still in the grand scheme of things, heading towards the end, and who will this new leader side with, obviously.
What did you think of Euron Greyjoy? He had one big scene in this episode.
He is another bad family member. Hard to say, except that, look, it is funny on Game of Thrones how many people just are like, it's a funny thing on Game of Thrones. Either people are despicable to their family members or too close to their family members. But yeah, he's obviously a sort of younger, more virile. He kind of even said, he called his brother Old Man, which on this show makes sense because people have so many siblings and all these kings who had, kids for 20 years.
Right.
I have a feeling, we have these strong personalities with Yara and him, so I am most curious to see them sort of clash. A clash of kings? To see how they clash and how Theon will play into it all, because Theon is not
if he does,
if he makes it back there, because Theon is a redeemed character, but he's not a strong.
He's far from being an Ironborn as he can at this point.
Right, and so I think the most he can hope for at this point is Yara sort of protecting him, since she did try to save him. So I don't really have a big read on Euron yet.
I really liked what I saw of him. He was a character who I was excited to see introduced. Still a lot of unknowns in the books, and I think him being a mystery there really sort of hyped my anticipation of him here. But I thought the actor played in Palau Iceback, which I'm probably butchering that pronunciation, but I thought he really nailed it, and they did a good job underlining, you went crazy in the storm, and he's like, I am the storm. I saw some debate in the comments, was it cheesy or was it epic? I lean more on the side of epic, but I hope they don't introduce this character just to have them do nothing like Prince Doran and Arya Hota over Dorne.
Yeah, but again, it's even though Benioff and Weiss are playing things very close to the vest right now, and I just, like we talked about last week, I think they heard the complaints about Dorne.
Yeah.
And so I would hope that they're kind of taking that all into account as all this stuff is developing.